Hi, my name is Dave Bentley, and I'm going to talk today about social networking. I need to give you a little background about who I am first so that you'll kind of understand the thrust that I come at this subject with. I have been a pastor now for 2 decades, and in that time, my primary focus has been finding ways, often creative ways, of sharing the gospel message with people around me. For me, social networking and social media has opened up an amazing opportunity for sharing the gospel and for telling people about the Lord Jesus Christ and about the truth of the gospel. And so I come at this with that bend, with that maybe some might call it a bias, that I understand the remarkable power that is ours if we will claim it and possess it for the kingdom that is found in social networking. Let me begin by telling you a little bit about where this all begins, because I think that even though the text mentions the beginning of social networking in the late 60s through CompuServe, it really begins far, far, far into the history, really back to the beginning of mankind and our creation, in that we were created with a desire to connect. In fact, one of the key themes throughout Scripture, throughout the Bible, from Genesis all the way through, is that of relationship, that of connecting. Initially, of God connecting with His creation, that connection, of course, being severed through sin, and then all of the efforts that God made leading up to the cross to reconnect us with Himself through faith in Jesus Christ. Also about our relationships with each other. In fact, the Ten Commandments really refer to our relationship with God, that connection with God in the first few commandments, and then our relationships with each other, our connections with each other in the latter commandments. And so you find that theme, that thread that runs throughout Scripture about relationship and about connection and about social networking, though it may not have been called that at the time. Man has often sought ways to connect. The inventions that we use on a regular basis, things like the telephone, beginning even before that with the telegraph, the mail service, all of these things are ways for man to connect with other men, because this is one of the drives that we have. And so while the technology of social networking may be new, the drive that is behind it and the desire to connect with others and to have that kind of relationship with others, that's been around for a long, long time. Again, long before CompuServe in the late 60s. And so let's think about some of the history and development of social networking, sort of where this got birthed, if you will, into the technology that we have today. Part of that process is what I have seen anyway, and what I recognize as sort of a community bulletin board. We've all seen these places. Maybe they're in the center of a town square or by the entrance to the grocery store, where people are able to come and put up notices. Maybe they've got something for sale. Maybe they've got an event coming up. I know that our church, we use those things quite regularly. We put flyers up for different events so that people can see what's going on. A course that I'm in, the same thing. In fact, we've been out papering the different bulletin board and kiosks with our upcoming poster promotion. And so social networking is sort of a different way of looking at these kiosks of information. Some people have likened it to passing notes in class. You know how you used to get in trouble for passing notes and how embarrassing it was to have the teacher read that note. Well, now we do that publicly all of the time with these comments and posts that we place on social media sites such as Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and others, that now it's not just our neighboring classmate that's reading it, but literally could be accessed by millions of people. Gosh, I wonder if my English teacher would still embarrass me anymore. So that's a little bit of the history and the development, kind of the background of it. Of course, it became popular. It's become popular, just monumentally popular, over the last decade or so with the introduction of Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, and Instagram, and other things like that. It's used for a number of purposes. It began back in the 60s, as we mentioned earlier, with CompuServe, being sort of a way of connecting businesses and commercial enterprise. And at a time when, well, let's face it, most people didn't really, the idea of a personal computer in the home was sort of a far-fetched idea. The expense, the size of the equipment, just seemed like that wouldn't be a possibility. And now, in my home, we have 6 different computers, and that's not to count our smartphones and other things that we have because my kids are all in school and so on. And so this has grown and blossomed because of the access and affordability of the personal computer and other media devices that people are able to use. And it's used for, I want to just boil it down to 4 real primary purposes. One is social connections. I have, I think, about 300 friends on Facebook. Most of them I don't think I've ever met. In fact, if we were to go to my funeral, people might be surprised. They'd show up to hear the eulogy and say, well, I expected more people here. After all, he did have hundreds of friends on Facebook, but probably only a handful of them will show up to an event like that. But Facebook has provided us with opportunity to connect with people, to share information, to get ideas. Again, as I have mentioned, my purpose, I share the gospel. I tell people as often as I can about what I have found in faith. And so building these social connections is one purpose. Personal connections, again, not only do I have all of these friends that I may never meet, but I do have close friends that we're able to stay in touch with. I served for many years in Florida and Alabama. Now we're up in the state of Vermont, but though that distance, though it's 1,500 miles to some of my friends down there, through Facebook, through Skype, and through other social networks, we're able to stay connected almost on instant time basis. We can get up in the morning and chat for hours if we so desire. And so we're able to make these not just social connections, sort of general connections, but more intimate and personal connections as well, and stay involved and stay in touch with people. We're able to see when people have grandchildren, when their kids are graduating from school, when they're having surgical procedures. All of these things that are a little more intimate, a little more personal. We're able to experience those in a way that prior we might have waited for several days for the mail to arrive, or possibly make a long distance phone call. There's another aspect to that, and that is the relational connections, dating sites and such. It's as a funny story. A few years ago, my credit card was accessed and ran up hundreds and hundreds of charges to one of these dating sites. Of course, I've been happily married now for almost 30 years, and so I knew it wasn't me, and I was pretty sure it wasn't my wife. But these things have become more and more popular. Zoosk and the other dating sites that are out there that bring us together. They match people, as one advertiser says, based on compatibility. For people that are single, people that are searching, one of my friends said, the dating world is really a jungle, and it's dog eat dog out there. Those kind of terms would make me want, if I was going to be in the dating circle again, to think about maybe the safety and security of sitting behind a laptop. Now, as the country song says, the problem with that is I can be anyone I want to. I can proclaim myself to be anything that I want to online, and so these dating sites can sometimes lead us down paths of dishonesty and deception, but it's a key element and part of what these social networks have provided. And then there's another aspect of it, and probably kind of returning back to the roots of what it was initially intended to do, and that's sites such as LinkedIn that provide a connection for people on a professional level based on like careers and on things like that. And so it provides us with ways of connecting with people under categories. For example, I have a number of pastors in my LinkedIn circle that we're able to connect that way, and you can actually recommend people based on certain aspects of things that they do. For example, of course, we all kind of recommend each other for preaching and for teaching and such, and so we have that as an option as well through social networking. Now, That's not to say it's not without trouble, not without problems. Social networking has risen to the forefront for a number of reasons. Not only is it so popular, I mean, everybody's got a Facebook page, and you know, people, advertisers now will say, look us up on Facebook, and so it's risen to that level because of its accessibility. But that same accessibility and that same public nature has led to some, let's say, just negative occurrences as well. The text mentions one very well-known case, that of Amanda Cumming, who in December 27th, 2011, committed suicide by stepping in front of a bus. In her note, you know, very painful moment, I'm sure, for everyone involved. The reason for that tragic event was that she was tired of being bullied online, and so we've come up with a term. We've heard it now regularly. If you're involved with school in any way, one of my other careers is I work as a teacher in a variety of different age levels, primarily middle school. And so we hear about, and we have seminars and professional development about the topic of cyberbullying, and because it has become such a major issue, that we've all seen news reports, and we've heard the experiences of those who have been bullied, who have been tormented by peers and others online. And again, because of the public nature of it, it's not the same as it used to be back with the schoolyard bully, where he would threaten you to get your lunch money. Now the threats, and now the vicious attacks, and now the slanderous comments, all of those things, now they appear for the world to see, and often are accompanied with images that are, let's say, less than friendly. And so cyberbullying is one of the things that has arisen out of this issue. Another thing that comes up is what I call the parent's worst nightmare, and that's that of cyber stalking. As my children are growing up, they're both adults now, and they have their own children. But as they were growing up, one of the rules in my house was we always wanted to know where they were going, what they were doing. They grew up, rather, in our house. We had America Online. CompuServe sort of ran its course, and then America Online rose up as a way to get onto the internet and developing this social network. And we began to be introduced to things like chat rooms and such. And we learned this sort of, the hard way, and as probably most have, through watching terrifying and horrifying stories of people gathering children's information and then going and grabbing those children. One case we had down in Florida where one student was sharing information with someone they believed to be another student, and sadly, that person ended up being a pedophile, an adult, older man, who, because the child was unwittingly giving all of the information, knew his schedule, knew when they would be home, knew when the parents wouldn't be home. It ended up in a very tragic circumstance. And so again, these problems that we often didn't maybe hear about, and now because of the public nature and the mass media, we hear about them more regularly. So cyber stalking is another one. Then, of course, along those same lines, is cyber security becomes an issue, because there is so much information out there. I mean, I mentioned earlier my credit card being swiped and used on these Match.com and sites like that. That is because I purchased something online, and somehow all of that information is now readily available. And we hear all the time again about hackers breaking into retailers and other places like that, and getting that information that they can use for nefarious purposes. And so there are some negatives, but that aside, I believe there's far more positives. And again, it comes down to, will you be, we have the responsibility of managing, particularly if you have children, know what they're doing online with social networking and such. But there are positives, and one such positive, again, as I mentioned, my other career, if you will, is in the area of education, and I'm so thankful to have been introduced to Pinterest. Pinterest is a site where people can just kind of throw information in there. It is a huge bulletin board, basically. In fact, what you do with Pinterest is you literally pin things as you would on a bulletin board, and it's there for anyone who has access to your profile, to what you pin on there, your site. And so as a teacher now, we have referred to this, and I hear this all the time, that Pinterest is a treasure chest of ideas for teachers. Most of them absolutely at no cost. And when you're struggling to come up with an idea, maybe for a thematic unit, Pinterest can provide you with a lot. I was setting up a classroom as a long-term sub, and was able to pull together an entire unit on the Cricket in Times Square, and put all of that together, mostly from what I was able to gather together on Pinterest. And so the sharing of information, and not just Pinterest, but in all of these areas, all of the time on Facebook, there's things that are coming out from teachers. They're sharing ideas, videos, images, and such that are available to us through social networking. That might not have been available to us any other way. I can communicate with teachers, and one of my best friends is an English teacher in Florida, and we communicate and share ideas all the time through Facebook, through social networking, that we're able to use in each other's classrooms, and it just provides us with amazing opportunity. Again, a more personal reason is we're able to connect with distant family and often forgotten friends. I have family throughout the country that used to be, in fact, it was kind of, again, telling you a little bit about my history. My mother and I used to write letters all the time, and so it was, one every week or so I could expect a letter from her, and she would often wait a little bit longer to get letters back from me. But now through Facebook and through social networking, we connect with each other on a more regular basis, and so it keeps us connected with family that we may not be in the same area, not able to get together with on a regular basis. And then one of the cool things that it's provided is it has connected us with forgotten friends, people that we went to school with. Those friends that you think, oh, these are going to be lifelong friends, but time has a way of pulling you apart. And I have friends now on my Facebook that I went to school with that I hadn't connected with in years. Even some of the people that were in my wedding, that because we traveled to Florida and they were here in Vermont and New York, we didn't stay connected. Well, Facebook and social networking has provided a way for us to stay connected with them. And then something that I find personally and professionally helpful is Facebook and other places like that allow us the opportunity to mass market at virtually no cost. I can place information on there about what's going on at our church, and again, it's available, it's accessible to anyone that's connected with me through Facebook, and I shudder to think how many people actually have access to information I put on there. But I can share that information. I can tell them events that are coming up, maybe a concert or a special meeting or whatever might be happening. And so it goes out there and it's available to people, and you can dress it up pretty nice. I add a picture to it, and that doesn't cost anything. It's out there and accessible, and in nonprofit circumstances, cost is everything. And so when we can find something that doesn't cost anything and is still, effective, then that's a great opportunity for us to seize on as Christians, as a church, for sure. But anybody, you can advertise your family gathering. You could put your Tupperware party or your Tastefully Simple party or whatever other sort of marketing thing you might be doing out there. Invite people to it. You can specify people, and again, that is at no cost. They don't charge any extra for doing those things. And then another positive is it allows for almost immediate interactive feedback. You can put a post out there, and if you ever wonder how quickly people can respond, go ahead and misspell something and just wait and see how many people comment back on how you spelled something wrong or misused a word. Or maybe that's just me with the grammar police that are on my Facebook page. But you get feedback pretty quickly. You can post a question, as I often do prior to our Sunday morning worship services. I might put a question out there for people to kind of get them thinking about what we're going to be talking about and give me some response, and then I can use some of that in even right in the sermon as we move forward. And so it gives an opportunity to interact with people, and again, people that you might not ever connect with or see physically, you're able to connect with through social networking. And so I really want us to understand and appreciate the Christian application of social networking. There are three things that we as believers have that we have to consider. One is this: the mandate of the Great Commission. Jesus commissioned us to go and to tell the world about him, to go into all the world and make disciples of all men. And it's a daunting task when you think about the size of the world, and yet I'm sure you're recognizing that the world is getting increasingly smaller, though the population is growing. Through social networking, through the reach of the internet, we're able to reach into places that were unheard of prior. And the Great Commission, the mandate of the Great Commission, requires that we seize on this opportunity to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, to share his story with the world through the social networking, through our Facebook friends. People ask me one time, why do I keep wanting to get so many friends? Because each friend that I have is one more person that I'm able to influence and maybe share the gospel with. And yes, sometimes I have to read some of their posts. They're not all that great, but I try to be a light, and through that I try to be cognizant and faithful to the mandate of the Great Commission. We also have the mission of reaching the world. And again, as I mentioned, the world is a huge geographic location, miles that separate us. And yet, through the internet, we can be on mission from our office, from our desk. We can be involved in the missionary work of sharing and evangelizing and ministering to people. Right here sitting in the desk. I have friends that are in missions, that are in South America and other places, that we are able to stay in touch with. And again, I can be involved in their mission through this social networking. So the mandate of the Great Commission, the mission of reaching the world, and then simply the ministry of touching lives. If you spend much time, it doesn't take very long to find people that are genuinely hurting, people that are in need of hope, people that are in need of light. And by using social networking, by connecting with these people, we are able to minister to them and to touch their lives with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We're able to make a difference through that process of using social networking. I mean, the last time that I can think about really ministering to someone was just a couple of days ago. A post came across, and someone's daughter was in the hospital. She's in the hospital with leukemia. And she was just struggling and having some anger with God, and not just as a pastor, but as a friend and as a fellow human being. I was moved with compassion, and through Facebook was able to share with her and talk with her a little bit, and make a difference in that moment. And so the mandate of the Great Commission, the mission to the world, and the ministry to lives are things that move us and compel us to utilize social networking as believers. And so I want to close with 3 questions. I want to give you 3 to answer for yourself. And that is, first, what will the next wave of social networking involve? When you think about where it began in the 60s, as I said, with CompuServe, and that very small startup, I don't recall hearing anything about social networking until well into the late 80s, and of course not nearly to the degree that we do now with Facebook and Twitter and others. And so what will be next? Is there something next? It's certainly a wild ride that we're on. So what will the next wave of social networking involve? The second one, what is our Christian responsibility when it comes to social networking sites? What is our job as believers? You see, we're here for a purpose. God's left us here for a reason. We are to be salt. We are to be light. And so how are we salt and light through our involvement with social networking? And how can we glorify God and be about the kingdom work as we're doing our social networking on Facebook? It's got to be more than looking at silly pictures of cats or watching videos of people falling down. It's got to be more than that. So what is that? What is involved in that? And then my final one, we've always heard WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, with Facebook and with social networking, we have to start asking, what would Jesus post? WWJP. And so that might be just an interesting question for you to consider. What would Jesus post? And if he would, then we should too. I'm Dave Bentley. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you some information to work through and to gnaw on. And maybe I'll see you out there on the social networking sites. God bless you. Have a great day.